Larwood, and I'm really excited that my book Dungeon Runners is on the shortlist for the Spark Book Awards. So I'm here today to talk to you a bit about it. So the idea originally came from during lockdown. I was homeschooling my son and he wasn't having a very good time. So we decided we'd have a bit of a project. We'd come up with an idea for a story. And we took the things that we've been doing during lockdown to inspire us. And we've been playing a game called Dungeons and Dragons online, which is, if you haven't heard of it, it's kind of like a storytelling game set in a fantasy world with dragons and elves and dwarves and things like that. And we'd also been watching a lot of American football. I noticed that my son really liked all the teams and the leagues and the points and things like that. So we put the two ideas together and we came up with Dungeon Runners, which is set in a world where going into dungeons and beating monsters and solving puzzles and finding loot is a sport, and people watch it on their crystal screens, and they have teams that they support, and there are leagues and there are cups and there are matches and there are battles. And the story follows one young Dungeon Runner fan called Kit, who is a North, which is a mixture between a gnome and a dwarf. And he dreams of having his own dungeon running team and becoming a famous dungeon runner. So he starts to put a team together and he enters a trial and he has a friend called Sandy who can cast magic and do spells, but not very good spells. All she can do is make a tiny little sandcastle at the start of the story. And he has another friend called Thorn, who's a vampire, but a vegan vampire, and he's the team healer. And so they put the team together and they go into the dungeon, and the story is all about what happens and whether or not they win the trial and become dungeon runners. It's beautifully illustrated by Joe Todd Stanton, and I'm going to read to you a little bit from it now. So this is where they're in the dungeon and they're battling the big dungeon boss. Kit nodded and they all helped to push the door open a crack, then put their eyes to the gap. On the other side was a terrible sight. The Hedgepig team, the Prickleton Porkers, were fighting for their lives against what looked like a giant blob of jelly. Bright green and the size of an elephant, the squidgy lump was jiggling and squelching all over the place. There's a picture of it there. It kept growing tentacles made of slime and whipping them at the porkers, who were slashing away at it like mad with their swords and axes. Every time they sliced off a chunk, it wiggled back to the main body and got sucked in again. There seemed to be no way of hurting it, let alone beating it and winning the points. "Hey," said Kit, spotting an exit on the other side of the room, "I've got an idea. Why don't we try to sneak past while they're fighting? I bet we could make it across to that door without any of them noticing." "Sounds good to me," said Thorn. Sticking close together, they eased the door open and began to tiptoe across the chamber. So if you want to find out what happens, you'll have to read the book. Hope you enjoy it, and thanks again. Bye-bye.